Hi, I'm Beyang Liu, and this is Go Time.
It's Go Time, a weekly podcast where we discuss interesting topics around the Go programming language, the community, and everything in between. If you currently write Go or aspire to, this is the show for you. All right, and we are back for another episode of Go Time. This is episode number 12. Here with me today is Brian Kettleson.
Hello.
And I should say I'm Eric St. Martin. I always forget that. Unfortunately, Carlicia is not here today with us. She's doing her first week at her new job, but she's here with us in spirit. And I know that she would love being here today, especially because she is a super big fan of our guest today, which is Beyang Liu from Sourcegraph. How you doing?
Doing great. Great to be here.
Yeah, we're all big fans of Sourcegraph. You guys are famous for live tweeting GopherCon.
That was so awesome.
Thanks.
Are you guys doing that again this year?
We got to figure that out. Actually, I'm actually not going to be able to go to GopherCon, unfortunately.
What?
And it's
canceled.
Usually me that's organizing the live tweeting, but we do have Dmitry Shirilov and Renfred Harper. Dmitry, you guys probably know because he's pretty prominent in the Go open source community. But they're both going, and hopefully they'll organize something.
I didn't even realize that he worked for Sourcegraph. That's awesome.
Yeah, he's been a member of the team for, I think, about a year and a half now. One of the more senior members, and he's awesome.
We got to get him on the show, too. Every time I come up with some absolutely crazy Go project, his name is on it. I don't understand that.
Yeah, you guys should really have him on the show. He's done a lot of great stuff in the open source community, and he's just a great guy in general.
Yeah, we'll get him on the schedule, too.
Yeah.
But today it's you. So let's talk about all the awesome tools that you guys have dropped in the last couple weeks. Holy cow.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah. We've shipped a lot of stuff in the past couple of weeks. There's the new editor integrations and native stuff that I'm pretty excited about that kind of gets the information that Sourcegraph provides just in your editor and, literally, one keystroke or zero keystrokes actually away when you're programming.
Yeah, we were talking about that a couple episodes ago.
I guess I should start by giving an intro. I assume most of your listeners probably won't have heard of Sourcegraph, so I should probably say a little bit about what we do, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Cool. Yeah. So Sourcegraph's essentially a programming assistant that's built on top of the global graph of code. And so what I mean by that is the assistant part is it helps you answer a bunch of questions that pop up, every single day, every single hour when you're coding. Things like, how do I use this particular function? Who else uses it? Who should I bug if I have a more in-depth question that I need to ask? And it does all that by building on top of this graph of code. So, every single piece of code, every single definition, package, type, whatever is a node in that graph. And the edges are essentially, function calls or package imports. And that's something that we do differently than a lot of other tools out there that essentially treat code as a blob of text. We actually understand, this is a thing that calls a function over here. And because of that, we're able to give you very high quality usage examples, jump to definition in the web browser, and a really good code search. So it's basically this all-in reference guide that lets you answer all these questions that arise over the course of the day. It helps you get the answer, within seconds as opposed to minutes, and with a lot less mental energy than something like grep or just Googling for the answer. So that's kind of the sales pitch there.
It's a pretty good sales pitch.
Yeah, a couple of the big ones. The one that we noticed, and see, Carlicia is like the encyclopedia here, because I will say we talked about it a couple episodes ago, and she will tell me specifically which episode it was we discussed it.
Yeah.
But we were talking about the new editor plugins and how awesome that was, that as you're starting to type a function, you can actually see examples from real world projects on the usage. And I mean, that's so fantastic. Now, does the GitHub plugin or the browser plugin that works on top of GitHub, does that also show that? I remember it showing documentation and references to other code, but does it show stuff inline as well?
It doesn't show anything inline. So with the Chrome extension, it's a little bit more limiting because we essentially have to build on top of pre-existing UI, and that's a little bit tougher than building our own application. So we do our best to show all the information we can there, but it's still not as good of an experience as kind of like in the editor and on sourcegraph.com, unfortunately.
Now, the other thing that I noticed you guys did was released, what's it, Sourcelib, I think it's called?
Yep.
Which is the library behind doing the code parsing.
Yeah. So basically, in order to extract the information that we use to display, great code search results and usage snippets to the user, we need to actually parse the code and extract the symbol table and do other sorts of static analysis. And we do that across a couple of different languages now. We started with Go, but we now support Java and soon Python and JavaScript. And so in order to do that in a language independent fashion, we built this library called Sourcelib that kind of shells out to language specific analyzers and then transforms the data they admit into a language agnostic format that then is consumed by the application. So the application doesn't have to worry about the specifics of a particular language. It just has to deal with that one data format.
Have you seen anybody using that for like any interesting projects? Every time I see that, I'm like, I want to build something with that, but I haven't come up with a fun use case. But I say the same about all static code analysis. I'm like, I feel like I could do something useful here. I just don't know what that is yet.
Yeah, actually, the impetus for our editor plugins and integrations came from the community, just people building on top of that and saying like, hey, this information is useful. I just want to jam it in my editor, which is where I spend a lot of my time. And so we kind of looked at that and said, hey, we can help out with that. In addition, build in kind of like full on support for that experience. So it's not just this kind of hacky thing. It's actually like a first class citizen in the experience that people get from Sourcegraph.
So I played with the Vim extension, actually in NeoVim. I don't know if it makes a difference, but I played in the Vim extension, I guess it was last week or the week before.
Yep.
And I was blown away. I cannot believe how freaking cool that was.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, I turned it off because it was just a little bit slow. Sorry.
Yeah.
But I think all of that's just internet latency. But it was really impressive.
Yeah. I mean, performance is a big thing that we're hammering on right now. And we're actually going to ship a native desktop client soon that should hopefully help with the latency things. So kind of a sneak peek at that.
Yeah, that's got to be hard too, like Brian said, with the network latency. It's much easier to do that stuff when all the code exists locally than it is to do it remotely.
Yeah, and what we'd like to do in the future is really connect the code that's on your local machine to this global graph that exists out there, in the ether, the cloud, because that's really where a lot of the magic can happen. You have access to this dictionary and index over all the possible open source code that you could use in the world. And at the same time, you're changing just like a tiny bit of that graph locally in the stuff that you're doing in your individual editor. And it would be awesome just to like kind of understand in real time how the semantics of the code are changing. You change a function here, and that's going to change, how many callers of this particular open source function there are, or that's going to change, that's going to have an impact on someone else on your team who's changing the same code or a related piece of code. And a big push for us in the future is just bringing more of that experience natively, so that we have access to the graph, the bits and pieces of the graph that are changing in real time as you're kind of typing in your editor.
That's kind of crazy. Can you give us an idea of what the request flow looks like when I'm typing in Vim? What's happening behind the scenes?
Yeah, so the architecture, we try to do things in a way that are as scalable as possible, in the sense that we want to support a bunch of different editor plugins without a lot of deep custom work for each editor. So what each plugin does is essentially there's kind of like an API that Sourcegraph exposes specifically for the editor plugins. And so for For example, one of the things that the plugins do is anytime your cursor is hovering over, a token in the code, let's say it's, a function name, what it will do is pull up documentation and usage examples for that function in Sourcegraph in your web browser. And what it does there is essentially, in the editor, it extracts a token name as well as some contextual information from the editor, and then makes an API call to sourcegraph.com saying, show me the documentation for this particular token. And here is, some more contextual information like the repository URL and, other language specific stuff. And that just hits the API. Sourcegraph then goes and finds that definition in the global graph index, populates it with documentation and looks up some usage snippets, and then sends that back over the wire, and that's it basically.
So the whole process is wickedly fast when you describe it that way. What kind of data storage are you using on the back end? I like the hardware stuff. What databases, what indexes are you using?
Yeah, so we kind of have a custom graph storage system that's built on top of Postgres and Google Object Store right now. And so it basically uses Google Object Store for all the kind of detailed metadata. Once you're looking for data for a specific definition, a specific function or package, then you can look up the detailed metadata in the Object Store. And then we use Postgres for some of the more things like search queries and listing definitions subject to particular search set of search criteria. And that's actually gotten us surprisingly far. I think most people, when they think of writing something like a search engine over all the code in the world, Postgres is probably not the first thing that comes to mind. But we've been impressed so far with how good full text search support in Postgres actually is, and it scales pretty well too.
Now, did you have to build a spider to index all that data?
Yeah, so the way our crawler works is anytime it indexes a library, it looks at the dependencies, because we actually extract the dependencies of that particular library, and then it just goes and indexes the dependencies. So it just kind of crawls the graph of code, the dependency graph.
Now, have you guys been doing anything with the new BigQuery data set that went
out? That's been really interesting. We haven't. I personally haven't played around with it yet. It's actually interesting because that is kind of like a text-based approach to searching over code, and a lot of the answers you can get from kind of that setup, you can actually kind of get from Sourcegraph already. So if you're looking for all callers of a particular function, in BigQuery, you probably write a regular expression that runs over the entire set of code that GitHub has put up, and it might be a little bit noisy because regular expressions aren't perfect at parsing code. But with Sourcegraph, you just go to a definition, and every single usage snippet there is kind of 100% accurate because it operates at the parser level.
Right, yeah, because the BigQuery stuff, a lot of people were writing regular expressions where you've kind of tokenized the stuff as you were crawling it, so it's much easier for you to look for specific things. I want a function named this, rather than having to write a regular expression to match a function definition.
Yeah, I will say that stuff is really cool, though. I think one of the things that people don't realize enough, I think, is code is just another form of data. It's not just this. People often tend to think of code as like a form of text that you write in an editor, like you would write a Word doc or something like that. But it's really very highly structured data. And when you think about a lot of the stuff that we do as programmers, as software engineers, it's really exploring this data set and making changes to this data set. And so I think what that data dump did, along with kind of like the BigQuery queries that went along with it, is it showed kind of the power that you can tap into once you start to treat code as more of a data set. So in the future, you can imagine more senior members of the team who care about, overall code quality and maintainability of the code base, and they worry about, things that more junior engineers might be doing to shoot themselves in the foot. They can actually, issue queries against a data set, the global graph of code or the graph of code inside your company, to look for patterns and anti-patterns like that and make kind of like sweeping changes, as opposed to, the old way of doing things or the current way of doing things, which is, single person, single editor, single machine making, changes one at a time.
Interesting.
So is that kind of what's next for Sourcegraph, is building some team tools for looking for things like that?
Yes. I think that's going to be the individual use case stuff, the search and the snippets is really valuable for, every programmer, in terms of the day-to-day stuff that you do. But I think that the real value is just going to be in the way that we can change how teams work together to build software. So it's things like, issuing queries like that to discover anti-patterns in the code. It's also, more kind of explicit forms of collaboration, where if you have a question about the code right now, more likely than not, you either, go and ask the person in person, or maybe you drop them a message in chat, in which case that information, both cases, that the answer to that question that you asked is lost to time almost as soon as it's answered. And that kind of sucks, because if you have that question, chances are someone else on your team is probably going to have that same question or a very similar question later on. And wouldn't it be nice if, the tool that you use could actually attach, discussion messages to specific pieces of code, and those kind of like stay with the code, stay with that particular function or package as, the lines of code change over time. So we think a lot about the impact that we can have on team productivity, because I think that, software engineering, like programming, I actually think it's still pretty early days in terms of, software engineering methodology and kind of like best practices. I think it's astounding to me that, like, in 2016, a software project like healthcare.gov is not kind of like a trivial thing to do. Like, you can't just, take a team of 4 to 5 programmers and implement that. And I think a lot of what we want to do is kind of address the pains that software teams have that prevent them from executing on projects like that.
No, that's interesting. So on top of the stuff that you have kind of globally, you guys offer kind of on-premise installs of Sourcegraph too, right?
Yeah, we're kind of limited in who we go on-prem with right now, just because, we're still a small team, and on-prem is a bit of a larger commitment. So our main on-prem customer right now is Twitter, and we're kind of holding off on on-prem for smaller customers at the moment. But we do offer an on-prem solution.
Yeah, I mean, all of that comes with support and keeping people up to date and all that jazz.
Yeah.
So talk to us a little bit about your usage of Go at Sourcegraph. Is most of this stuff primarily written in Go?
Yeah, most of the application stack is written in Go. Basically everything except the front end, which of course is JavaScript, and the language analysis stuff, which is more polyglot. But everything else is basically written in Go. And Go's been amazing for kind of 2 reasons. One is just a really solid tool to build on top of. It's a very kind of like no nonsense language. There's very few surprises that you encounter when building a web application with it. The tooling around it is great. And that kind of leads into the second reason why Go has been great. It's kind of been an inspiration actually for a lot of the concepts that we want to promote with Sourcegraph. I think, the tooling around Go is so solid that it really lets you think of code more as this form of data that you can modify with other tools, not just by, like handcrafting it, hand typing it in. Things like, Go generate, for instance. I think like all the meta programming that is enabled in Go would be much tougher in other languages without, as strong tooling. And that just leads to, incredible productivity gains when you're able to just like generate a bunch of code that does what you want to do, as opposed to having a human just type all that stuff out.
Oh, absolutely. Couldn't agree with that more.
Just make Brian type it all out. He's got this.
Yeah, I'm the king of code generation. If you can generate it, I'm your guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great. And then there's also Alan Donovan has done such great work with Go Oracle, and I think the talk that I was most looking forward to that I'm sad I'm missing at GopherCon is the talk he's going to give on the Go Guru, which is kind of like an extension of the Go Oracle that is designed for editor integrations and things like that.
Now, did you know that we're live streaming GopherCon this year?
I did not.
Well, part of it, the mornings.
I will probably tune in.
Yeah, we're live streaming the morning shows at twitch.tv/GopherCon.
Nice.
So if you just tune in to twitch.tv/GopherCon. If I can make the whole streaming thing work, I mean, I'm an old guy. I don't know. This whole Twitch thing is for the young kids. But if we can make the streaming work, then you'll be able to catch that talk at 9:35 a.m. on the 11th.
That's awesome. You guys, I have to say, like, the two GopherCons that I've gone to have been just top notch. Thanks for all the work that you guys put in to make that happen.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. It's our love, the community.
It's fun and it's stressful, but I think the kind of reward from it is better than the stress we get from it. But yeah, we're a few days out from. Well, actually, Brian hops on a plane tomorrow morning,
9 a.m.
and then I follow him the next morning. Yeah, so it's coming up.
How has it been to kind of watch that thing grow along with the Go community over the years?
I think it's mostly mind blowing.
Yeah. Do you want the truth? The first year was craziest, obviously, because we didn't know what we were doing, and we learned a lot the first year.
Yeah.
Last year we had some ideas, but we grew into the convention center, which changed the rules for everything, and that made it a much bigger concept. This year, it's our second year in the convention center, so we have a better idea of what we're doing.
Yeah.
But the Go landscape is changing a little bit. We have a different set of sponsors this year for a portion of them. We always have some of the same people come back over and over, and we truly appreciate that. But we do have a different group of sponsors this year. As Go matures, the target of our sponsorship will change too.
Yeah.
And that has been different for us.
Yeah, I mean, we're still learning each year too, how technical the talks should be, whether we should do multi-track or single track. And we're still kind of experimenting a little bit to kind of figure out what the exact format is, but people still keep coming. So we're doing something right, I guess.
Yeah, that's interesting. Any like broader trends you've noticed in like the Go landscape, like who's using Go, who's coming to the conference?
I think Brian and I, we continue to come back to this whole, most of the new distributed systems tools are all being written in Go. We just continuously see that. Mm-hmm. It's like every new distributed systems tool that comes out is written in Go.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether it's, I don't know whether it's because Go's the best languages for that, or whether people who use Go also love distributed systems. I'm not really sure, but I mean, I'm happy that it works though.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
I think the thing that's surprised me most this year is the fact that we're seeing registrations from really off the wall places. There was an auto parts store that registered a couple employees, a couple
really?
Like 2 or 3 weeks ago.
That's crazy.
And when that email hit it is that that email hit my inbox, I thought, that's a big adoption point for Go. It's not a tech company. It's not some VC funded startup somewhere. They're not cutting edge, whatever. It's just an auto parts company.
Yeah.
And for me, that was it felt like an inflection point for Go.
Yeah. I mean, I think that speaks to one of the broader trends, not just in Go, but in the software world in general, which is, more and more you're seeing companies that you don't think of as traditional tech companies becoming highly dependent on the software they're able to build.
Right.
I don't know if you guys seen the new kind of like GE ad campaign where the tagline is essentially, GE is a digital company that happens to do infrastructure. And the whole point of it is to appeal more to, software engineers and convince people that, GE is kind of a software first organization.
Huh.
It's almost impossible to have any business without software anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, we depend on it so much for just about everything.
Yeah, totally. It's like, business logic has been a term that's been that has existed for a long time now, and often been misused. But now it's like, more and more the logic of your business is in the business logic of your code.
And it's safer there too.
Depends on who's writing
Yeah.
it. You say there's a big competitive advantage for
That's
some
true.
companies if they have software systems that allow them to provide whatever their goods or services are faster. I mean, I think of Walmart as the shining example of a company that uses really cutting edge software to cut their margins down drastically. I mean, they've got all this just in time inventory. They see a weather forecast
Yeah.
coming in for a hurricane, and they start shipping water bottles to Florida before the hurricane even hits because they've got these really strong IT systems. I think that's a good example of how software is changing all business, not just traditionally technical companies.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think, as that shift is happening, I think, I think Go is pretty good because the tooling is so good around it. But in a lot of other language ecosystems, I really think that the tooling is kind of lagging behind all the places where software is becoming critical. Just because, you take a look at, a typical large, non-technology company that tries to do software, more often than not, those projects are over budget, over time, they underdeliver on features. And something that we think about a lot is, how can we build the tooling ecosystem and the, kind of programming assistant for individuals and teams that enables, people who don't organizations that don't necessarily, they're not steeped in kind of software development methodology, and so they need kind of better tools to efficiently build things and deliver things on time. I think that's going to be like a big question the industry has to address in the next couple of years. Otherwise, we're going to see more things like healthcare.gov and things of that nature.
Well, that's actually a really good transition into our discussion about our sponsor. Speaking of people who build great tools to help you ship your software, Equinox, one of my favorite tooling companies, Equinox.io, helps you package and distribute your Go applications. You can package and release CLI and on-premise software using Equinox. And I think my favorite part about using Equinox is the native packages and installers for Mac, Windows, and Linux. So you get the MSI, you get the PKG file, you get Debian files, RPMs, yums, all of that good stuff. It's really easy to create an application and then let Equinox ship it to your customers in a self-updating format. We use Equinox at Backplane, and I think, Beyang, you mentioned that you had used it before too, hadn't you?
Yeah, we've used it for on-prem stuff at Sourcegraph, and I just have to say it's so easy. Like if you're kind of like if it's your job to manage like on-prem or native installers for a Go-based application, and you're just like worried about the headache that entails, then like you should definitely check out Equinox. It makes your life so much easier. It pretty much works out of the box, and it's just really great. And I also have to give out a shout out to Equinox's creator, Alan Shreve. He's just a great guy. He's really prominent in the Go open source community, and he's just done so much great open source stuff that yeah, I just have to give a shout out to him.
That's awesome. We probably talk about ngrok at least once an episode.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to point out. If you haven't heard of Equinox, you certainly have heard of ngrok.
And he also he gave a talk, I think, at this year's .go about basically he wrote a program that makes it much easier to read through functions and Go code by basically what it does is it strips out all the kind of boilerplate. So, when you're reading through a function trying to understand how it works, you really want to concentrate on kind of like what is it doing? You don't want to think about like logging statements or like error handling or anything like that. And he wrote a tool that kind of strips out all that other cruft and just shows you the part of the the code that is probably, what you want to see when you're reading through something.
Oh, that's
So
interesting.
if you haven't checked out that talk, I would highly recommend that.
That is slick.
What's the project called?
I don't know what the name of the project is, but I think it was at .go. If you just search .go Alan Shreve, I think the talk will come up.
That's awesome. Well, you can support Alan and his company Equinox by going to equinox.io/gotime. And Equinox is free for community and personal projects and very inexpensive for companies to release their tools. So go check it out. We love them.
I'm sure he'd be perfectly happy with bags of money to ship to him.
Well, I had to pay for my ngrok subscription because I love it so damn much. ngrok is, I use it every single day.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm constantly using ngrok.
So Alan's getting two sponsorships for the price of one today. The double.
I'm curious to hear, in addition to things like ngrox and Equinox, what other tools do you guys rely on day to day that you find really useful?
Oh, that's interesting. So many of them are probably abstracted away from me now with Vimgo. I don't run them myself.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of the stuff that comes in Go MetaLinter, I use quite a bit, which I almost feel like I should turn off for a little bit so that I visually catch these things now. And I don't just sit here and write code. I'm like, it'll catch it.
Yeah, my answer would be the same as Eric's, just because I use Vimgo and I have absolutely no idea what the 17 binaries it's running in the background managing my code for me. I love them all, though. Thank you.
Nice. Yeah, that's awesome.
At prior places, we use some stuff like FFJSON and SQL-C and some stuff like that. I'm trying to think of what some of the other tools we use for some of the code generation. And
yeah, what do you guys use? Like what parts of code do you auto generate in your code base?
Generate all the things. All the things.
Yeah, so Brian's mostly been on the Goa kick lately, so generating all the API stuff from kind of a specification of the API.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I'm giving a talk at abstractions.io. I'm in Pittsburgh, whenever that is, August something, about generating all the things. I'm really excited about that because one of the fun things about Goa is that it's got this DSL engine in it that means that you can create your own DSL to parse whatever you want to parse, and then take the metadata out of that and generate whatever you want to generate. Yeah. So it's not just generating APIs. If you spend a few hours writing some code, you can generate Kubernetes configurations or Docker files or whatever it is that you need to generate. And that's kind of been my burning mission for 2016, is to really just generate everything and have that DSL be the single source of truth for me. And I really like that a lot because you're generating the code, and it becomes very easy to make changes to your system. And the DSL is very self-documenting, so you understand what you're doing and why.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I've seen some polls going out about kind of dependency management tools and stuff like that are favored. I'd be really interested to see kind of what the state of what tools people use regularly for Go development are.
Yeah.
And I'm willing to bet there are probably a lot of popular tools in there that I don't use, and I should.
I'm sure there are.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, I feel like every other week there's some new tool that someone mentions, and I'm like, oh wait, like that would be really useful. Why am I not using that yet?
I have Florin in the GoTime channel just said Delve. How do we forget about Delve?
How could we possibly forget about the best debugger ever? Although I don't ever debug, so maybe that's why I forgot about it, because I don't ever debug. My code just works.
You just are you a printf man?
It puts print it out.
Yeah.
I think I used Delve twice
as well,
and I found it to be impressive.
Yeah, I'm not always a debugger person. It depends on kind of how intricate the issue is that I'm trying to diagnose and how much I need to pay attention to overall state of the application and stuff like that versus whether this particular block of code is getting hit and what the values within that scope are.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so I guess a lot of times I'm probably a print person, but yeah, occasionally I do need to break out a debugger.
Yeah.
How about you? What Sourcegraph? What are you guys using over there that we might be interested in stealing from you?
Mm-hmm.
Well, the thing I use the most is probably Sourcegraph itself, just for exploring code and finding user examples. Other than that, before I used the kind of like Go Emacs plugin because I use Emacs as my editor, but I've since switched to kind of like the Emacs editor plugin that we shipped recently. Let's see what else.
Brian and I are going to try not to hold that against you.
Yeah. So like for kind of like the day-to-day, like, I'm programming, I need to look up information. I mostly rely on Sourcegraph for that these days. For kind of like the metaprogramming stuff, we generate a lot of things. We wrote this tool called Gen Mocks that automatically creates mock structs for testing purposes. So, you have a struct that represents some sort of service that you want to call. Gen Mocks will generate a mock for that lets you easily mock every endpoint of that service. We use gRPC gateway to generate the API to the application that the UI and the editor plugins hit. Let's see.
Yeah, gRPC is another one I've used heavily.
Yeah.
GenMox looks interesting, though.
I haven't seen that one.
Well, it looks interesting.
The GenMox that you were talking about?
Oh yeah, GenMox. That's it's a pretty small tool, pretty straightforward. Check it out.
It looks like it just kind of takes an interface and kind of generates mock stuff, structs for you.
Yeah.
That implement that interface.
Yeah, I wish Dimitri were here actually, because he could actually speak to a lot of the tools that we use and all the stuff we do to maintain kind of like good quality code as the application progresses.
Can we get like the Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? Phone a friend.
Yeah,
can we get that going.
We'll just have a show just for Dimitri. That would definitely be another interesting show.
Yeah,
we can talk about his gist code imports.
Yeah.
So I forgot about that. So I guess we're probably getting shorter on time here. You guys want to talk about any interesting news and projects?
I have a couple interesting things to talk about.
I know which one you're going to say.
Which one am I going to say? Just tell me which one am I going to say first. Go ahead. Twitch. Yeah. Twitch. That blog post that Twitch put out a couple days ago, we'll put the link up on Twitter and in the show notes about the garbage collector latency. That was just an amazing blog post. Loved that. Really good post. I read it twice.
And I think this speaks to Beyang's point, kind of like the kind of just the tooling and just the way the community interacts too. Like I love watching the journey here of kind of how they work together on continuously improving this. Did you see that post?
No, I hadn't seen it yet. I'm definitely gonna check it out though.
Yeah, so it's basically Twitch walking through starting their release with, I think it was 1.2.
Yeah, Go 1.2
of Go. And their chat server implementation and the GC pauses and things, and kind of the evolution of discovering what those latencies are and working with kind of patches on their side and working in parallel with the Go team and getting some of that stuff implemented and changed in the garbage collector. And it was insane. Like it went in total from what, like 10 milliseconds?
It was tens of seconds down to 1 millisecond.
Yeah. It was insane.
Crazy.
In garbage collection pause times. And it's just an awesome story for Twitch and their engineering team, and a great story for Go too, to show just how much Go has improved over the years too.
Mm-hmm.
I guess, I mean, maybe the Go team doesn't get as much love as they should for some of these things that happen behind the scenes that most of us aren't even aware of.
Yep.
We see the end result, like, oh yeah, garbage collection times went down, but we don't see the insane pain that some companies suffered, and engineers from their teams and Go kind of working together to collaborate and make it better for the rest of us.
I'm really looking forward to the Go Guru talk at GopherCon. I hope there's like a follow-up blog post, and I'm looking forward to using it too. It looks awesome. I think the Go team again there is doing great work, pushing forward. Not just the state of Go tooling, but also like what other language has just a tool that works out of the box that does so much that provides as much information about the code as the Go Oracle does.
I agree. It's almost like they have parallel paths of performance and tooling. They're marching down two different directions of making Go as fast as it can possibly be, but then creating this amazing ecosystem of tools that really make our lives as developers better.
Yep.
We heart the Go team. There's
some really interesting talks this year that I really want to see. There's some deep dives. One of the ones that I find most interesting too is the packet injection one. Like, I think that one's going to be a lot of fun because it's totally different. Doing packet capture and analysis with Go.
Well, we're live streaming, Eric. You can watch it at home. If you go to twitch.tv/gophercon.
I can watch it at home. Can I hide out in my hotel room and watch it?
It's kind of awesome. Hey, anybody seen Eric? Nope.
So the sad thing is we always have to wait until the videos come out. We don't really get to see the talks until afterwards, but we get something completely different out of it. So it's a lot of fun. So what else do we have going on? I know there's been a couple of releases. Kubernetes 1.3 came out, which is awesome.
Big release.
Which kind of had some of the Kubernetes stuff in it, which is the kind of cluster federation.
Yep.
And they bumped up the max size too. It's like 2,000 node clusters, and I want to say 50 or 60,000 containers.
Yeah, I saw a tweet a couple hours ago about 60,000 pods. I don't know if that's correct, but it certainly seems like the addition of etcd 3.0 allowed them to scale quite a bit. I know the etcd release was big, but yeah, Minicube's really awesome.
And I know that I think that they're mostly compatible now with the OCI and CNI stuff for Rocket. And then I haven't checked out the new dashboard, but I'm looking forward to that too. But yeah, it seemed like some cool stuff there. There was another project that hit 1.0 too.
Traffic.io, the load balancer.
Yes.
That looked like a big release for them. And then Glide was released at 0.11 this week. Looked like they had a lot of very nice features added there. But I think mostly it was a pretty quiet week. I think everybody's holding all of their big releases for GopherCon next week, and I don't blame them because it is the big event in the Go community. So, we expect all the big news to come next week.
And then, I think mostly the past week has been all the BigQuery stuff, which I'm sure like you've been reading most of the posts, right, Beyang, with that?
Yeah, I've been following along.
Yeah, so that's mainly the big thing. And you were ahead of the curve because you guys have been doing code analysis on all the Go projects on GitHub for quite some time now. So do you guys do any metrics right now? Are you building any statistics internally about kind of commonly used packages and things like that?
Yeah, we have a lot of those statistics internally. We're still working on kind of like the product version of that. What sort of statistics would you guys like to see on Go projects?
I think that should be fun. I think we should make a call out for people too. Like, let's create a list of stats people would be interested in, because I think that would be...
like the things that we're thinking about are like some basic statistics you can already get from the site are how many times is this how many times is this function called in the Go universe? How many other repositories reference it? How many times do they call it for each repository? Who are the authors that use this function in some way or another? But there's a lot more statistics we could actually show the user. It's just a question of what's the most important thing? What are the most important pieces of information to show user when they're trying to navigate a library or figure out how to use something or determine whether this library is the best one to use for the job at hand.
I would love to see how many external dependencies there are. Does this library have 47 other dependencies? Yeah.
Like how many things depend on it, or how many things it depends on?
No. How many things it depends on? Is there a left pad coming up in my future?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, I guess I would be really interested to see kind of the effects of importing a project, right? So like if I'm going to import this package for something I need it for, how many packages and maybe how many lines of code in general, like am I importing just to get whatever that function is that I want? And maybe I use that as the determination of whether or not I should just make a copy of this one
Yeah.
function, or whether I should import the project itself. Or, I mean, I think stuff like that might be valuable. So, and we should put a call out though to anybody who has interesting ideas. Should they shout at you at your Twitter account? Should they
Just
email you?
you can either
File
tweet at
tickets?
Sourcegraph, it's SRC graph, or just email hi@sourcegraph.com.
Nice.
I always like those hi at email addresses. I
It's
need
very
one.
friendly.
I need like a hi at GopherCon or a hi at Gopher Academy. Well, I guess we can't say hi at GopherCon because now it has a different meaning, right? With all the new rules in Denver.
Especially in Colorado, yeah. Very different.
So it might be taken incorrectly. So what else do we have going on?
Well, I think it's time for Free Software Friday.
Oh yeah. How can we forget about Free Software Friday?
We can't. It's in my blood.
Do you know about Free Software Friday, Beyang?
No, enlighten me.
Yeah, so Brian started a couple months ago now, this whole kind of thing to do hashtags on Twitter for Free Software Friday.
Uh-huh.
So basically show love to open source projects or maintainers that are making our lives easier. Because I think we often forget to say anything to project maintainers until we're unhappy.
Yep.
So as part of the show, we've kind of tried to incorporate that so that we're encouraging other people to do so. So before we kind of finish out the show, we like to just kind of go around the panel and kind of just thank some project that is in some way making our lives easier or has made our lives easier.
Cool.
Yeah.
So you can feel free to do one yourself or not, because we're kind of blindsiding you with it. But Brian and I both have ones we're going to do.
Yeah, I'm going to start off. I'll kick it off with GoKit. So, we've got this API training class on Sunday before GopherCon, and one of the last topics we hit is code generation. And I remembered as I was writing the slides for it that I wrote a code generator for GoKit last year. Probably this time last summer, a year ago. So I dusted it off, cloned it from GitHub, pulled it down locally, and I ran it. And it generates a GoKit service based on using JSON encoding for a GoKit API service. And I was blown away because the code generator that I haven't touched in a year was generating code that compiled against today's GoKit. And that's API stability that you cannot buy anywhere else. I was really, really impressed. How many other projects have you seen where you can not touch something for a year and it compiles against the current version of that project? I was impressed. So shout out to GoKit and their team and Peter for API stability. Rock and roll.
Yeah, that's awesome. So for me this week, I was struggling to think of something like big, and it's always the little tools we miss. So I went back to the basics here. So the Silver Searcher, I've been using this for a few years now instead of like ACK and grep when I'm just trying to search around directories. The output's a lot cleaner, and the speed that you can grep kind of through a directory is just insane. And one of the coolest things that I love about it is that it also adheres to your like htignore and gitignore files. So when you're searching for something inside of your source repo, it will ignore searching through files that are already in your ignore list. And then it has its own .ag ignore that you can kind of use at a global level to tell it to ignore files with extensions or in certain paths and all that stuff. So if you're still using ACK and grep, I highly suggest trying out the Silver Searcher.
Nice.
There's a good Vim plugin for that, isn't there?
Yes. So and it's one less key.
That's an AG.
It's AG to search using the Silver Searcher. I mean, and that one key. So yeah, there's a plugin for Vim so that you can do a :AG and use it within your.
Not that Beyang would need that because he uses that other thing.
I know. I need to use Sourcegraph more.
Yeah, check it out. Send us feedback. Tell us how we can make it better. Yeah, I think the project I'm going to call out this week is it's actually a project that's not released yet publicly, I think, but it's something that we've been using internally. It's written by Matt Holt, who is author of the popular Caddy HTTP server.
Oh yeah.
So he wrote this library called Checkup, I believe is the name, and what it is it's essentially this uptime monitor. So it's kind of like all these services that do uptime monitoring already, but what it does is it has like a really nice kind of configuration format for just quickly specifying a bunch of URLs that you can hit. So, one frustrating thing for me with a lot of uptime monitors is that the UI is just so clunky and you have to go and manually update it. And then, something changes and you got to go through and navigate through the UI and update that again. And it would be nice to just describe all the, key endpoints that you want to hit just, in code. So those can change as the code changes. And then you can deploy this thing to any server, any like AWS or GCP node, and it just kind of works. It gives you pretty graphs for how uptime is going, and it's just kind of like super easy to use. Feels very native to the Go ecosystem. No nonsense, no cruft. Just write out the list of things that you want to monitor uptime for, and you're good to go. So shout out to him. He's done so much great work for the community.
Absolutely.
I was actually Googling around for it. I couldn't find any public mention of it, but we've been kind of using it internally.
So if we get all 2 of our listeners and us to beat up Matt, maybe we can get it released.
Yeah, tweet at him. Tweet, I say.
Come on, Matt.
I don't even know how many people are listening live right now. Maybe Matt's listening right now.
All 6 of them are listening.
So I think that we're out of time. I think we're a few minutes over, but I think this has been a lot of fun. And I really want to thank everybody who's on the show. I want to thank all the listeners. I want to thank our sponsors, Equinox. It's equinox.io/GoTime.
Right.
Definitely hit them up. Share the show with other programmers. If you haven't subscribed already, you can go to GoTime FM and subscribe to our upcoming weekly email newsletter. Follow us on Twitter, and we are GoTime FM on the Gophers Slack channel as well. And I think with that said, goodbye, everybody. And we are out next week because of GopherCon.
Woohoo.
What is conferences get in the way of podcasts?
But don't forget, if you're listening live, don't forget that we're live streaming GopherCon, twitch.tv/GopherCon. Did I mention that already?
Yeah, the morning section, you did.
Okay, good.
So yeah, catch us there. And if you are at GopherCon, come visit us. We will have t-shirts. And I think that's it. Thank you for being on the show too, Beyang. It's been a lot of fun.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been awesome.
That's a wrap.